I started hotel gigs in New York in September 1999. My first steady engagement was actually the most famous hotel in the world, the Plaza Hotel in New York. And there's a room called the Pond Court, which was a wonderful gig I had for 6 years. And then the people who follow these things would probably know that in 2005, the Plaza Hotel was, new owners came in, they decided to close the hotel for 3 years and do major renovation. In fact, half the hotel now is condominiums, and they made big changes. So obviously, in, I think it was April 2005, that gig ended. I was very lucky because the management of the Mark Hotel, which is not as famous, but it's one of New York's great small hotels, they found out they were actually looking to start music, and the general manager and food and beverage director came to hear me, and the last week I played at the Plaza, and they hired me immediately, so I didn't even lose a week's of work.
Nice.
Then, after 2 years there, that hotel was sold, and it was a big thing for a number of years in New York. I was selling these hotels and turning them at least 50% into condominiums.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happened there, and they closed down. And I was not working just for a short while, and but I was lucky enough to get the gig that it turns out the Intercontinental, the Barclay. It used to be the Barclay Hotel, built by the Vanderbilts in 1926, and Intercontinental Hotel Group bought it 15, 20 years ago. So that's why I say its actually formal name is the Intercontinental of Barclay. They were looking to start music, and I was just really, wasn't so much luck. I was actually making a few calls around to find another gig, and I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And that was an interesting gig to get because the Plaza also was a big audition process. They specifically wanted to switch from piano to guitar, and a number of guitarists had to go play 2 weeks in a row, and it was actually a real process. And I wound up getting that job. And then at the Intercontinental, they spent 6 months looking. It wasn't just guitar. They listened to pianists. They listened to jazz trios. They weren't sure what they wanted for music, and I was one of the people that was called in to play as an audition, which I did, and I was lucky to get the job. And so on the one hand, I love hotel playing, especially great places like that, because you do get a pretty sophisticated audience. You can play whatever you want. You're not really hired to play background music. It's also not a concert. It's something in the middle where you are the entertainment. They expect that people are going to enjoy it and comment on it and listen to you. And there are nights where it is like a concert. There are nights where you can have applause after every number. By the way, here's a little tip for hotel players. If you're getting a lot of applause, never play more than 3 numbers in a row that get a lot of applause. In other words, if you're playing virtuoso pieces or flashy pieces, because to get too much applause, to be too much of a center of attention is actually not good. They don't want that either. So if I'm playing and it's a very lively audience, the 4th piece, I'll start playing something very, very low key just to get people back, settled down, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a little hint. You also need in a hotel gig to play more up-tempo music, more major key music, and a huge advantage, which pianists do and also guitarists have, by the way, is if you can play a really rich classical repertoire, but you also know a lot of tunes and a variety of styles. People like variety. So you probably want to play 75% of your tempos from at least an allegretto up to presto. 25% or less would be slow numbers. You're not going to play the Hinastera Sonata, which I don't even know anyway, but you're not going to play, you could play the Bach Chaconne on a hotel gig, but it would have to be, if it was later in an evening and there were some serious music listeners and it was the right setting, you could play that. But you'd have to, the expression is play the room, and you really have to play the room. But at a hotel like the Intercontinental, you get people coming from all over the world, a lot of business people, a lot of United Nations, because we're right near the UN. And you got a lot of people, I love it. People will come up to me and ask for Bach or Weiss or Scarlatti, and it's great. Or some people, you get amateur guitarists will come up, can you play Fernando Sor?
Yeah.
That's really great. You don't get usually, almost never do you get drunks. You know, nobody ever came up and said, play Melancholy Baby.
Yeah.
But I do love it. Every now and then somebody will come up and they think they're joking that I'm not going to do it. They'll say, can you play Stairway to Heaven? And my favorite thing is to go, what's that? Say something like, I beg your pardon. But I do an arrangement of Stairway to Heaven. And then you play it. And that's a huge favor. People love. I love playing Stairway to Heaven. I think it's a great piece. Also, Bohemian Rhapsody, which I arranged just 6, 7, 8 months ago. People loved it.
How much repertoire do you maintain at a given time for gigs and stuff like that?
At this point, I have to say it's a huge amount of repertoire. And playing a steady engagement, here's another tip to anybody who wants to do this. Your most important clientele are the staff, the waiters, if it's in a restaurant area. Actually, in the Intercontinental, I'm sitting in a place where the restaurant's in front of me, there's a beautiful bar area to the right, and the entire lobby is on my left, so you're playing to the entire first floor of the hotel. Mm-hmm. You have to keep the staff happy, because if the staff is not happy, you're not going to last. Believe me, you're not going to last. They'll get somebody different. And the worst thing you can do is just have a small repertoire and keep playing the same pieces. They will get tired of you. So having a really big repertoire makes a huge difference, so that you're constantly playing either new stuff they haven't heard at all or haven't heard in a while. And I'm always actually learning, working up new pieces, new tunes, and adding things. And after all, I've been playing the guitar for 50 years. This is 2010. I started in 1960. Mm-hmm. And I've been playing professionally in New York since 1975. So you can imagine, really, especially if you work at it, I'm always working on my repertoire. Every day, I'm taking old pieces out and redoing them. I use Sibelius notation software, so I do all of my own arranging. And I'm always tweaking, I'm always revising. I have, there's a few friends I have that I'll send arrangements to, and they know if they get a new arrangement from me, they know in the next couple of weeks, they're gonna get 4 or 5 or 6 revisions. It's usually, I'm guessing the average number of revisions I do on a piece is probably about half a dozen times, where I'll find a different fingering or a different solution or change notes. So I know that in my Sibelius folder, just the other day, because somebody asked me to send them a list, and there was something like 1,100 files.
Oh,
man. And a bunch of those were folders, actually, like box suite. There were suites that there were 5 or 6 movements. So it's a lot of music. I have piles and piles of music here, and I have tons of music on my computer, and I've never actually, in a long time, counted up everything. I remember that when I started at the Plaza on pop tunes, when I started there in 1999, I remember I knew about 30 tunes, and I remember that a year later it was 300. And I don't know how many there are. There's tons. I bring Stanley Yates, who you studied with. He's a great guy and a great player. I love his playing. He's a very, very intelligent musician. And he was on a concert tour about 2 months ago, and was in New Jersey, not far from Manhattan, staying with a great guy named Steve Freitas. Steve, if you're watching this, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. Friedes, Freitas, and I'm sure I'll get an email very soon from Francis' last name. I just call him Steve. They were at the hotel, and one of the things that Stanley remarked on, he saw the music bag I bring. He couldn't believe how much music I brought. I can play a lot from memory. I do less from memory than I used to, because I just, I don't have to, and I've learned so many tunes that after a while your brain just gets really overloaded. But I bring tons of music to the job. Certainly not because I'm going to play. I'm not going to play all of it. I mean, you might play 50, 60 tunes in an evening. Mm-hmm. And I probably bring her classical and popular. I don't know. That bag must have 300-400 tunes, and it's a very heavy bag, actually. And I explained that actually the reason I bring all that stuff is that you do get requests from people, classical music or popular music, And generally, most of the time, I know what the piece is most likely to be requested of just from experience. So usually, if somebody comes up to me, if I don't know it from memory, I have it in that bag, which I keep right next to me. It's a big thing when people request music, and you know it. You know, the guest is very happy. Management loves that because the guest's very happy, and it's very satisfying feeling for you as a player to somebody come up and you play the piece that they wanted to hear. Every now and then somebody will request a chaconne, by the way.
Yeah.
And I love that when they do. That's great. Or the famous Passacaglia by Sylvius Weiss, the one in D major. And they'll come up, or something by Dowell, and then they'll come up and ask you, and you'll play for them, and they love that.